Imagine dumping out a 1,000-piece puzzle onto a table, but you don't have the picture on the box. Now imagine you're the one expected to put that puzzle together. If your parent or other loved one just passed away, and you're now the one in charge of handling everything, then that's what the process of administering a trust or an estate feels like for most people. You're looking at accounts, paperwork, responsibilities, but you don't actually know what the full picture is supposed to look like. And at the same time, you're grieving. People are asking you questions, and there's this pressure in the background that you're supposed to be handling it. You don't want to do anything wrong, but you've never done this before. In this video, I'll show you the 7 essential documents you need to get started, how these pieces fit together so you're not guessing your way through critical decisions, and the specific things that will completely stall the process if even one of them is missing. So I had a trustee come to me after her mom passed away. She'd already started trying to handle things, making calls, gathering information, trying to move the process forward. But there was one problem. She didn't actually have all the core documents in front of her yet. And almost immediately, things started to get confusing. There were conflicting instructions in the trust documents, uncertainty about what she was actually allowed to do, and real concern that if she made the wrong decision, it could be questioned later. And I see this all the time. The right person has been designated to do a difficult job, and they're really trying to do all the right things. But they're dealing with something very unfamiliar, and it's at a time when they're already overwhelmed and emotional. And they're trying to make sense of a situation without having all the key pieces in front of them. Now, once those pieces are in place, things don't become easy, but they do become a lot clearer. And that's exactly what these 7 documents are going to do for you. The big picture will start to take shape. And just so you know where I'm coming from on this, I'm Darlin Morgan. I've been a trust and estate attorney for over 20 years, and I've guided hundreds of successor trustees through this process. And I've also been a successor trustee myself. So I've seen what this looks like on paper and what it actually feels like when you're the one responsible for it. And the pattern is pretty consistent. When you have these foundational pieces in place, things feel manageable. When you don't, it gets overwhelming very quickly. Document 1 is the death certificate. Everything starts here. And this is where a lot of people feel stuck right away. You're ready to start making calls, getting answers, and moving things forward. And then you find out you can't really do much yet, because until you have the death certificate in hand, most institutions won't even talk to you in a meaningful way. Banks, insurance companies, retirement custodians, they all need it before anything can move. So if you feel like nothing is happening in those first couple of weeks, I promise you, that's normal. It's not you. It's the process. A couple practical things here. You usually need multiple certified copies, not just one. Think more like 10 to 12. Different institutions will often require their own certified copy, and if you don't have enough, then you'll end up reordering them later and losing time. And sometimes there's delays getting the death certificate, which can make this stage feel even more frustrating. But once you have it, that's when things actually start to open up. Document 2 is a will or trust or both. Once you have the death certificate, the next question is pretty straightforward, but it's really important. Who's actually in charge here? And what are the rules or instructions that you're supposed to follow? That's what the will or trust answers. And there are really 3 things you're looking for when you read it. Who's in charge, who needs to be notified, and what the instructions are for how everything gets handled and distributed. Now, here's where things get more real. You're not just reading this to understand it. You are relying on it. Every decision that you make as a trustee is supposed to follow what's written in these documents. So you want to be very clear on what they actually say. And sometimes they're not as clear as you'd hope. I had a trustee come in after her mom passed away. There was a trust and there were 2 amendments. And when we read them all together, there was conflicting language between the documents. In one place, there was a formula that was hard to interpret. And in another, the drafting attorney had actually mixed up the names of the 2 daughters, and it looked like the wrong daughter owed money back to the estate. So now the trustee is in a position where she can't just move forward confidently. If she takes one path, it could be challenged later based on the language in the documents. At that point, you're not guessing. You're pausing and getting clarity, sometimes with the help of an attorney before you move forward. And one quick clarification here that surprises a lot of people. Just because there's a trust doesn't automatically mean that there's no probate. If assets were not actually titled into the trust, you may be dealing with a probate for those assets. So this document doesn't just tell you what to do, it tells you who has the authority to do it and what framework you're operating inside of. Document 3 is the EIN. This next one is a little less visible, but really important to get right. The EIN, or Employer Identification Number, is the tax ID for the trust or estate. And the simplest way to think about it is this. This is what the financial world uses to report income going forward. Because after someone dies, income doesn't just stop. Interest, dividends, rent, whatever's coming in still needs to be reported, but it's no longer reported under the decedent's Social Security number. And it's not reported under yours either. It gets reported under this new tax ID. So when you open accounts or when financial institutions issue tax forms like 1099s, they need a name and a tax ID to tie that to. This is what they're using. And the reason this matters is pretty simple. You want that reporting to be clean and correct from the beginning, so you don't create extra work later trying to unwind or fix tax reporting issues. So this isn't something that feels urgent in the moment, but it is one of those foundational pieces that keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Document 4 is a certificate of trust. This next document is what you'll use when you actually start interacting with banks, title companies, and other institutions, called a certificate of trust. And what it does is pretty straightforward. It confirms that the trust exists, that you are the current existing trustee, and that you have the authority to act. Now, technically, all of that is inside the full trust document, but you're usually not handing over the entire trust every time you need to get something done. This is the shorter version that gives institutions what they need without sharing more than necessary. So when you go to open an account, transfer assets, or deal with financial institutions, this is often the document that they'll ask for. It's essentially how you step into the role in a practical way. You already have the authority from the trust. This is how you show it so things can actually move forward. Document 5 is an inventory of all assets. This is the point where the picture really starts to come into focus, because up until now, you may have pieces, but you don't have a clear view of everything that exists. And that's what this is, a complete list of all assets. Now, when I say list, I don't just mean a rough idea. You want to know 3 key things for each asset: what it is and where it is, how it's titled, and what it was worth at the date of death. That title piece is really important because the way an asset is titled determines how it passes. Some assets are in the trust. Some have beneficiary designations like life insurance or retirement accounts. And some may still be in an individual name, which could trigger probate. So this isn't just about gathering information. It's how you figure out what path each asset is going to follow. And then the date of death value matters for a couple of reasons. It helps establish the overall value of the estate or the trust, and it becomes the baseline for things like tax reporting and future decisions. So when you're pulling statements, looking at real estate, identifying accounts, you're building a clear inventory that everything else will be based on. And just as a quick side note here, if you don't already have a simple way to track all of this, I've been using the same asset inventory tracker for over 20 years in every trust administration that I handle. And I've made that available for you to download below. It gives you a simple, organized place to track everything as you're finding it. Because without this, you're still kind of working in the dark. And once you have it, you can start making informed decisions about what needs to happen next. So document 6 is a list of debts and liabilities. At this point, most people are starting to feel a little more organized. But there's another side of the picture that's just as important. What's owed? Because it's not just about what's there, it's also about what needs to be paid. This is where you're identifying things like mortgages, credit cards, medical bills, taxes, anything that represents a liability. And this matters because before you start distributing anything out to beneficiaries, you need to make sure these obligations are accounted for. Otherwise, you can create problems later if something surfaces that should have been paid first. So just like with assets, you want a clear, organized list so you know what needs to be handled before you move forward. Document 7 is a list of ongoing expenses. This is one more category that tends to get overlooked. What is still running in the background? Because even after someone passes, things don't just automatically stop. There are still bills, subscriptions, memberships, things that continue unless someone steps in and addresses them. Utilities, insurance policies, automatic charges, memberships, services. So part of your job here is figuring out what needs to continue for now and what needs to be stopped. This helps prevent money from slipping out the door unnecessarily. And it also makes sure that anything important, like insurance coverage or property-related expenses, stays in place while you're working through everything. So when you step back and look at all of this, these 7 categories of essential documents aren't just paperwork. They're the foundation. They're what give you a clear view of what you're actually dealing with, what exists, what's owed, and how everything fits together. And once you have that foundation in place, that's when the real decisions start. And one of the first questions that usually comes up right here is, okay, besides gathering information, what am I actually supposed to do first? Not everything at once, just the first steps. Because when you're in this position, everything can feel urgent, and it's hard to know what actually needs your attention right now versus what can wait. So in the next video, I'm going to walk you through exactly that, what the successor trustee needs to do first when someone dies, and how to approach those first steps in a way that keeps things organized and protects you as you move forward. So click right here to watch that next.